She looks at you and says, "Nothing's wrong." And in that moment, something inside you tightens because your instincts know she just closed a door without locking it. I'm going to tell you something most men never hear, and most women never consciously admit. When a woman truly lets go, she doesn't say nothing. She goes quiet in a way that feels final. No tension, no charge, no emotional gravity pulling you back into her orbit. What you're witnessing instead is not absence, it's containment. And containment is effort. When she says nothing, what she's really doing is managing herself around you. That alone should tell you something important. People don't manage emotions for strangers. They manage emotions for people who still matter. If you were irrelevant, there would be no filter, no restraint, no internal negotiation. She wouldn't need to protect herself from saying too much or revealing too much or feeling too much. Understand this. Clearly, emotional neutrality doesn't require silence. It requires indifference. Silence, when it's heavy, is labor, and women don't perform emotional labor for men they've truly released. You're sensing the contradiction because it's real. Her words say closure, but her nervous system hasn't caught up. She's trying to convince herself before she convinces you. That's why the energy feels off. That's why her eyes linger half a second too long. That's why the conversation feels unfinished, even when she claims it's done. Men are taught to listen to words. Women communicate more through regulation, tone, pacing, distance, timing. When she says nothing, but still checks your reactions, still mirrors your mood, still feels affected by your presence, she hasn't detached. She's paused. And pauses only exist when there's something worth returning to. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-control. She's holding back because expressing what she feels would pull her closer or push her into vulnerability she's not ready to face. So she chooses the safest word possible: nothing. A word that avoids risk, avoids exposure, avoids admitting that you still occupy space in her emotional landscape. Here's the part most men miss. The moment you chase clarity, argue, or demand honesty, you disrupt that containment. You force her to either open up or shut down completely. And often she chooses shut down. Not because she stopped caring, but because you made caring too expensive. Your power isn't in decoding her sentence. It's in understanding the silence behind it. When a woman says nothing, she is not lying to you. She's lying to herself first. And that distinction matters more than you realize. She's attempting to downregulate an emotion that feels dangerous because it threatens a decision she's trying to stand by. Letting you go isn't just about losing you. It's about losing the version of herself that existed with you. And that version doesn't disappear on command. What you're seeing is internal conflict. One part of her wants peace, certainty, and emotional safety. Another part still responds to you on a visceral level. The body remembers before the mind agrees. That's why she can sound calm while feeling unsettled. That's why her words are simple while her energy is complex. Here's a truth that's uncomfortable for men to accept. Women don't detach linearly, they detach in layers. The first layer is behavior. She may reduce contact, set boundaries, or change routines. The second layer is expression. She stops sharing openly, stops explaining herself. But the deepest layer, emotional release, is the last to go, and that's the one you're brushing up against when she says nothing. If she had let you go emotionally, she wouldn't need to suppress anything. Suppression is evidence of attachment. You don't suppress what doesn't move you. You don't restrain reactions to things that no longer register. Her restraint is proof that your presence still creates a response. She hasn't resolved. This is where most men sabotage themselves. They interpret nothing as rejection or disrespect, and they react with insecurity, pressure, or withdrawal meant to punish. But emotional tension isn't solved by force. It's resolved by safety. And safety, paradoxically, comes from you not needing anything from her in that moment. When you stay grounded, when you don't pry or perform, you create contrast. You show her that she doesn't have to manage your emotions while struggling with her own. That's when the walls loosen. Not because you demanded access, but because you removed the threat. Another detail most men overlook. If she truly didn't care, she wouldn't worry about saying the wrong thing. Indifferent people are blunt. They don't soften language. They don't choose neutral words. They speak freely, because there's nothing at stake. Precision in speech only exists when the outcome still matters. So when she says nothing, listen beyond the word. Listen to the pause before it. Listen to the way she exhales. Listen to whether she stays present or pulls away. Those signals tell you more than any explanation ever could. The paradox is this: the less you try to extract meaning, the more meaning reveals itself. Because what she's fighting isn't you. It's the realization that letting go might be harder than she expected. There's a moment every woman reaches when she's trying to move on, but hasn't fully detached yet. It's the most unstable phase emotionally, and it's the one where men either lose all leverage or unknowingly deepen their imprint. When she says nothing, she's standing on that edge, not gone, not fully in, suspended between who she was with you and who she's trying to become without you. At this stage, your behavior matters more than your words ever could. Because she's watching for confirmation, not consciously but emotionally. She's asking herself a silent question. Does he still pull me into the same emotional patterns, or has something shifted? If you react the same way you always did, the attachment weakens. Familiarity makes detachment easier. Predictability closes the loop. What keeps her stuck isn't your attention, it's your emotional gravity. And gravity isn't created by pursuit, it's created by presence without need. When you don't chase clarity, when you don't push for reassurance, when you don't collapse under uncertainty, you become different in her nervous system. You stop being a problem to solve and start being an unresolved signal. Here's the psychological truth most men never hear. Women don't let go of men who still represent emotional regulation. If being around you calms her, centers her, or makes her feel more like herself, detachment becomes difficult. That's why she says nothing instead of saying what she really feels. Admitting it would force her to confront that she hasn't moved on internally. This is also why over-explaining kills attraction in these moments. Explanation feels like pressure. Pressure feels like obligation, and obligation triggers resistance. When you stay composed and observant, you allow her to feel without interference. That's when the internal conflict intensifies, because she can no longer blame you for her emotional reaction. Notice something important. She hasn't disappeared. She hasn't gone cold. She hasn't become indifferent. She's managing, and management is temporary. Eventually, she either releases fully or opens emotionally. But which direction it goes depends on whether you give her space to feel safely or force her to shut down to protect herself. Most men believe the goal is to make her talk. That's backwards. The real leverage is making it safe for her not to talk. Silence. That's allowed, becomes honesty later. Silence that's interrogated becomes distance. When she says nothing and you don't flinch, you signal strength. You show that you don't need control to feel secure. That alone separates you from most men she's known. And that difference lingers long after the conversation ends. She may walk away physically, but emotionally the question remains unresolved. And unresolved emotional loops are the hardest ones to close. What happens next is subtle, and most men miss it because they're looking for dramatic signs. There's no confession, no sudden emotional outburst. Instead, she starts checking in on you indirectly. A delayed message, a casual reaction, a reason to cross your path that doesn't look like a reason at all. This isn't coincidence. It's emotional testing. When a woman says nothing and you don't chase, something unexpected happens inside her. The tension she was holding no longer has resistance. And without resistance, it turns inward. She starts asking herself questions she was avoiding. Why does his calm bother me? Why do I feel unsettled when he doesn't press? Why does his silence feel louder than my words? This is where attachment either dissolves or deepens. If she had truly let you go, your emotional neutrality would feel relieving, freedom, closure. Instead, it feels disorienting because part of her was relying on your pursuit to justify her distance. Without it, she has to face the truth. The connection isn't being maintained by you anymore. It's being maintained by her response to you. Here's the psychological shift that matters. When you stop trying to extract reassurance, you stop being a variable. You become a constant. And constants are powerful because they don't beg to be noticed. They're felt. Gravity doesn't ask permission. It simply exists. At this point, she may start reframing the past. Not in conversation, but internally. Moments resurface. Emotional. Memories replay with a different tone. The arguments feel smaller, the good moments feel heavier. This isn't nostalgia, it's her mind trying to resolve unfinished emotional business. Men often think attraction is built through action, but in moments like this, attraction is built through restraint. Through not filling the silence, through not correcting her emotions, through letting her sit with the discomfort of caring without having an outlet for it. If you break that silence too early, you relieve her tension. You make it easier for her to detach. That's the irony. By trying to reconnect, you help her let go. By staying grounded and self-directed, you force her to confront what she hasn't processed. This doesn't mean waiting or hoping. It means living fully without signaling emotional dependency. When she senses that your life is moving, expanding, stabilizing without her involvement, it triggers a deep psychological response, not jealousy, relevance. She starts wondering where she fits now. And that question only arises when she hasn't emotionally exited yet. A woman who has truly let go doesn't wonder. She knows. When she says nothing and you respond with calm presence instead of need, you're not playing a game. You're revealing reality, and reality is harder to ignore than words ever could. Eventually, there comes a quiet reckoning. Not a dramatic moment, not a conversation you're invited into, but a private realization she can't escape. She notices that despite saying nothing, despite trying to move on, despite telling herself the story she needs to survive, you're still there in a way she didn't plan for. Not physically, emotionally, internally. And that's when the truth becomes undeniable. Letting go isn't about distance, it's about emotional resolution. And unresolved emotions don't fade. They resurface, they seek closure, they demand honesty. When she says nothing, and you don't react, don't chase, don't punish, you remove all external noise. What's left is her and the feeling she hasn't processed. That's when she understands she hasn't let you go. She's only been avoiding the cost of admitting it. Here's the final truth. Most men never hear. Women don't stay attached to men who need them. They stay attached to men who don't, but still matter. A man who is steady without emotional dependency becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, she sees the part of herself she hasn't released yet. This is why your dignity is everything. The moment you beg for clarity, argue for reassurance, or demand emotional transparency, you collapse the dynamic. You make it easy for her to categorize you, resolve you, and move on. But when you remain self-directed, calm, and emotionally regulated, you stay unresolved in her mind, not as a fantasy, as a question. And questions are powerful because they linger. They revisit. They return when the noise fades and the distractions stop working. Long after the words "nothing" have been spoken, the feeling behind them keeps echoing. This isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about embodying emotional maturity. When you stop trying to manage her feelings and focus on mastering your own, you become rare. And rarity creates value without effort. If she comes back, it won't be because you convinced her. It will be because she couldn't outrun what she felt in your presence. And if she doesn't, you've still won because you didn't abandon yourself for validation. You didn't trade self-respect for temporary comfort. Now, here's a question only you can answer, and I want you to be honest. If you removed all fear of loss, all need for reassurance, all pressure to be chosen, who would you become in your relationships? Write your answer in the comments. If this spoke to you, like the video, subscribe for more truths most men never hear, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it right.